All right, welcome to unnamed series title. I'm recording this video before I don't know what's going to come out of this. I'm just going to ramble about my theories and about my ideas of what I want to do with Eraserheads. This is the first installment of just me talking and then just kind of making a point for why I made a decision and why those decisions were made regarding this specific clip of Eraserheads, which I call Secrets. Let me just switch this here. I believe I can do that. Look at that. So you see my head on the bottom. Hello. This episode is called Secrets from Eraserheads. It's not really an episode. I call them episodes. They're just little clips. I record a dialogue. If you haven't seen this before, click on the link in the description so you can watch it completely before I just totally demolish it. It's only a minute and 25 seconds, which, it took me a day and a half to complete something like this. So, it took one whole day to just write a script really quickly, then record it in Adobe Audition, and then export that, and then put that in Adobe Animate Timeline to then begin animating the episode itself. But this episode begins with an exterior, just like any other episode I want to begin with. It's very popular, this kind of stuff, is to have intros that change slightly. Like Bob's Burgers has the facade of the beginning part, which is, just like a for sale store on the outside. And you can see something. I basically copied that entire principle. Is like the store always changes. And because, COVID's a thing, face panties and 95 masks. That's a joke. And then there's always going to be graffiti on the alleyway wall. And this time it says N95 gang, yo yo. Before it wasn't. It was called Skirts Hurt Pants Emporium, and the other one was Keep the Streets Clean. It was graffiti advocating the lack of graffiti. So it's just the episode begins with Well, let me just play this. It's zooming into the box. Obviously, the box is a very important element of what this is, because the box itself is where it takes place. I have some foliage on the ground that I kind of switch up and just move around every episode, but we can see what we do with that. All right, so the beginning of this episode, actually, if you see it just barely at the top, is like I haven't actually shown anyone that, but there's actually lights that I've drawn into the scene that's right above the characters, but you can't see them. So if this is the first episode you're watching, this is the first kind of breakdown of what I was doing beforehand. But this episode, can I make this full screen? That'd be very beneficial. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Is that this episode was just kind of developed. What I wanted to do was create different segments of an episode where it has a beginning part that's unrelated to the middle, and a middle that's just kind of ends on a punchline. So the TV joke is that is the old episodes of Eraserheads, which you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It was on my Sync Industries page. There's a bunch of other videos of me on there. But this is one of those. And it's the original idea of Eraserheads done with real erasers. So they make a meta joke on that. So what I want to do is I want to introduce a lot of meta in these series, where if it's meta to a previous episode, but it's not alienating and it's not like kind of flying over people's heads. That's a very delicate process because like I suck at writing. So the joke is there. But I still want it. And then I create like a joke, another meta joke about the animation itself and how it still sucks. In the meantime, everything else in the background just exists. Like it's the episode of the old episode will continuously play regardless of what Yeldon and Redmond actually do. I thought this was interesting here. Because they don't actually move. Do you see how Redmond and Yeldon move? They just slide around. If you looked in a previous update video, or just a video of just Yeldon moving. It was the first time Yeldon had been introduced into any of this tests. His head slides back when he moves in a dramatic way, but he just slides. They just slide around. I tried to experiment with them hopping, but it just takes too much time for them to hop around, and it looks very robotic. So them sliding around is what I've come up with. But it's really interesting because the camera moves and he just rotates. So In normal animating, they kind of like rotate. They have like a couple points of contact when they rotate. They do not. They have 3: left, right, and center. And if you noticed, I actually incorporated some shading into this because this is what people don't really realize, is that the key light is actually coming from this side, reversed. And then it's going over, so on the right side it's brighter than the left. So there's always a shadow and a highlight and a shadow side where their faces are perfectly exposed. And this didn't get it enough justice. I think it cuts away too quick before anyone can actually see, but this is an awful attempt at a joke for Redmond was an he was an ex-Nazi essentially, but in this universe, I guess black people and Jews or something, those people are green people, and that's the meta, I guess. So the joke is, obviously I don't have to explain it, he tattooed over kill, put love. Anyways, Redmond was racist, which is surprising because Redmond doesn't seem like that kind of character, but he is. So that's revealing one small thing about Redmond, which, you know, kind of gives some general exposition, just like any other cartoon, stuff like that. Then Yeldon, which I like Yeldon's character so far in this development because he is very intellectual, but he just doesn't, he's not very critical of himself. So sometimes he could be smart, and most of the times he's dumb, but either way, he's comfortable. Whereas Redmond, for example, doesn't actually, he's too critical of himself, and he actually stultifies himself from doing things he wants to do because he is too aware. So where Yeldon will just go and do it, Redmond thinks about it too much and doesn't end up doing it, or does it, but very hesitantly. So he's always very critical. And naive in that way. They're both naive, just in different ways. So I like to, this shot right here was a callback to the joke before. I just wanted to emphasize that, yep, it's still going on, it's still happening back there. And then this little part where they kind of look at the camera with the laugh track. Not a very good place thing, but I thought I'd experiment with that. The zooming in, all the camera angles are done in the animation process. So I can actually choose the angles I want and then animate around it, which is usually the workflow. So what I do is I lay the audio down on the track, and then I pretty much puppeteer them, where I put them in the positions I want, choose the angle, I cut the angle, move them, you know, do other stuff. And once all the angles and positions are defined, then I start animating their eyes, their body, their movement, and stuff like that. I make slight adjustments to the camera angle if they need it. Then this one, I really wanted to do a cutaway to a different part of this universe and see how that workflow works. So what I did is, so he's joking around that he likes to be erased a little too much, and then it goes in, and then it just crash cuts into him moaning, which, you know, recording the audio is really weird because I hadn't thought of this yet. I just didn't know how it was going to look, but I knew he was going to be erased. So this is, I just think it's really not very, it's just a joke, you know. This is the first time you see in this universe them being erased by, I guess, a higher power. Like, obviously somebody's doing this. So I hope to kind of develop like that this is their job, or like this is something that just happens to them and they just accept it, you know. They're all erasers. They know their purpose. They know that they get used to erase. But I thought because of Yeldon's kind of cut in his head, I developed this trait where he enjoys being erased, which I think it'll be canon throughout. But animating this was really fun because, you know, there's very little animation. I just keyframed the movements of the pen and then put some sprinkles on the ground. And this drawing is literally just pasted on top of the scene that you see immediately after. So it was just drawn in the camera box and then totally, you know, just deleted afterwards. The pupils do move independently and everything, but let's see I think that's pretty much it. I want, you know, this part where he's like, I really love their meetings. You know, Redmond would rather he'd rather be a Nazi, just for the fact that he has brotherhood. Which I'm explaining the joke, but it's just like, you know, it's ridiculous. So Redmond is so ignorant to the fact that he does things wrong that he cannot hold on to the fact that he does them wrong. So, and Yeldon can see through this, and he just is like, why don't you just exist? Like, Yeldon is like a hippie, and Redmond's like a 1950s, clean cut, but also ignorant. So like, there's a hippie ignorance, and then there's, kind of United States white picket fence ignorance, and that's the kind of vibe. And then of course they're clashing, and this exterior is, this wide shot is just showing, and you can actually look above. These lights right here are actually part of the fixtures of, the show. Like I want to animate those to kind of like show in the screen and kind of go up as like we zoom in the intro, but we haven't done that yet. I haven't done it yet. And then a crash cut to Eraserheads, and then the sting and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for coming with me on my journey. If you have any suggestions on any of those topics, or any questions on what any of this means, if you want to see the video in question, click on the link in the description. I'll post a link to that video so you know what I'm talking about. Currently, the sound effects are really rudimentary. I have a low bed of audio, just the ambient sounds, and then the same laugh track over and over again, which in a way is a comedy itself. But if you're watching these back to back, it can kind of get labored. So my self-improvement after making this episode is try to stick more on, like try to stay singular to the joke, and try to build up a joke so it's expectation doesn't meet reality, and then something changes. That's the joke. That's the punchline. There's a laugh track. Not to erroneously just add laugh tracks anywhere. And I'm trying not to go too deep into the meta, because if you hadn't seen those initial Eraserhead videos, the TV wouldn't make any sense. So I don't do it. So I did that for me, essentially. And I plan on doing that stuff. I want to incorporate its past into its current, and try to create meta jokes like that. I need to make sure when they stare at camera, when they actually reference to the audience and they break the fourth wall, it needs to be more clear and more defined in why they're doing it. What else? And I think the general animating needs to be more fluid. I need to add more head movements, and more blinks. And I spent a day and a half on this, which is really good because I'm happy with what I got in a day and a half. It was kind of like a project. The only things I had to draw new was the environment for the erasing, when Yeldon erases his head, and the close-up of Redmond's butt with the tattoo on it, and the TV. So that's what took up most of the time. If you have any other suggestions, just put them down below in the comments. DM me on anything. My name is Travis Flesher. Thank you so much for joining me on my journey, and I really, really, truly love you, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Mwah.